嗨，所有读友们，大家晚上好哦！发个嗨来看我的声音还可以吗？大家记得点赞分享这个直播，我们又见面了，很久没有的 guest 了没有翱翔会客室，今天来到第29期，8个月之后，我们请来了超级无敌重量级的嘉宾。这位嘉宾让我感到很荣幸，不过其实我也有点小紧张和压力。为何荣幸又紧张又压力？等会我才告诉大家。最重要，大家记得点赞分享这个直播。我希望在丹斯礼上来的时候可以至少破1000人好看一点。这位嘉宾大家已经知道了，就是担斯礼Tommy汤姆斯，他是一位很直接、公开和正直的人物。在此特别告诉大家，这是第一次翱翔会客室不需要先把提问大纲summary of the list of question 不需要发给我们的 guest 给我们的嘉宾过目的，不需要这是第一次。从这里就可以看出丹斯礼的特质所以请大家大力的点赞分享，让更多人看到今天的直播。回到正题，感到很荣幸，因为他是一位我国司法界的传奇人物而且他不止在私人界里名扬天下，他更在2018年成为了我国首位非巫裔、非英裔，不是马来人也不是英国人的总检察长 Attorney General， 他创下了历史记录，而且这个职位在1983年他自己就写过文章，称之为马来西亚最有权力的职位，他认为比首相还有权力所以他的成就无需任何赘言。而紧张及压力则是因为他是我拿到律师执照的师傅啦，没有他我拿不到律师执照不是跟大家开玩笑，他绝对不是一位很平易近人、容易亲近的人物。当时我实习的时候，我怕他怕到要死在我加入他的律师行之前，就有认识的资深律师告诫我你要有心理准备，会被大骂和被文件直接丢你的脸不过这些都没有发生啦只是谣言而已。所以我真的感谢丹斯礼他在我实习时所给予的指导，还有展示出的 high standard 高标准。好了，不浪费时间，我即将用英文开场用英文开场我就会把丹斯礼给拉上来开始今天的直播。但是在那之前先告知大家，这次我们会有现场翻译on the spot translation但是我的提问我的问题我会先翻译好，以留言的方式发在留言处，然后打上荧幕给大家看，然后丹斯礼的回答我将会用现场翻译的方式，所以我也要记录今天我是 multitasking 所以希望如果我有任何犯错身兼多职下有任何错误表现得不好，希望大家多多见谅啦在此也特别提醒，我这次访谈中所提到的任何页数都是英文版的，而不是中文版的。好，那我们现在就用英文开场Good evening, everyone. We have around 1,000 of viewers eagerly waiting for the interview tonight. Tonight is the 29th episode of our The Guest program. I am so honored, plus a little bit nervous and stressed for tonight's show, because the guest of honor of tonight's program is a super duper heavyweight and a very straightforward, open and spontaneous person. For your all info, this is the first time that no prior summary list of questions need to be passed to the guest to be reviewed first. This is the first time. So from here, you can see how spontaneous, how straightforward, how open the guest is. The guest tonight is definitely a special one. So please like and share so that more people will notice about this show and joining us tonight. I feel so honored because he is not only a legend, an icon to the legal profession and Malaysian bar. Moreover, he is also the first non-Malay, non-British Attorney General being appointed to this position, unprecedented in history. This position was once described by himself as the most powerful man in Malaysia about 40 years ago in 1983. I still remember reading that article. His achievement needs no further explanation. Nervous and stressed because he was my master during my pupillage time. And no joke, he is not an easygoing and is a very strict person. I was so scared of him when I was doing my pupillage and as a contract staff in his firm. Before my first day, some senior lawyer has advised me to be psychologically and physically prepared that fires will be thrown at your face. directly at your face. Luckily, it didn't happen. So clear the doubt, it didn't happen. Mr. Thomas,担斯礼Tommy is not that kind of person. So, but I really thank him for his guidance and the high standard demonstrated by him during my privileged time. So I don't want to waste any more time. Let me introduce my master,担斯礼Tommy to our show.
Thank you very much for having me and for those kind words.
Good evening. Please say hi to all the audience. Now already stood at 1,300 persons online.
Well, good evening, all of you. I'm sorry that I can't converse in the Chinese dialects, but thank you very much for joining in.
Thank you. Thank you,担斯礼. Before we start, can I maybe in some occasion during the dialogue between us, I just address you with your surname instead of担斯礼because it will make people think you are so far away. Is that okay for you?
Yes, yes, please. Sure, that's fine.
So we go directly. Before we go directly into your top seller book, which is Justice in the Wilderness, which a Chinese version had just been published early this month, and I urge who has yet to buy a copy, buy it quick. And this is a hot seller book, and you might catch yourself disappointed as huge possibility it will be sold out soon. So before we start the session tonight, I would like to ask Thomas a question which is not related to the book, which is, what is your views to the recently held Work for Justice 4.0 organized by the Malaysian PAR? To be frank, not many lawyers have attended this event. I think 300 to 500. The police at Padang Merbok was actually outnumbered the lawyers there, and there was no work at all. And the event ended by merely handing over a memorandum to the deputy minister. For you, is this a successful event and had achieved the purpose? And further to that, is it true that our judiciary is facing a very serious threat and warrants a work from the bar to support them? Mr.担斯礼.
Can I correct some of the facts that you mentioned? I was there from about 9:45 for the 10 o'clock session, and by the time we adjourned, which would have been about 11:30, I would say conservatively we had between 500 to 700 lawyers there. Of course, we could have had much more, considering we've got about 5,000 to 8,000 lawyers in KL. So, do you want to translate this or how? Or...
It's okay, Mr. Thomas. I'm recording it. When you finish your answer, then I will translate it on the spot. Yeah.
So, insofar as the numbers, yes, it could have been more, but we certainly outnumbered the police. What surprised me was that we were stopped from marching, which was the first time in my experience, and I've been in many of these walks or assemblies or associations outside in the open with the bar, and we've never had any problems. So that surprised me that we were stopped, and that tells you how influential and powerful the police are. To me, they were acting unlawfully. We were exercising our constitutional rights of assembly and free speech and whatever, and we were just going to go for 1 kilometer up to Parliament. So we were very disappointed we were stopped.
Yeah, I translate first Mr. Thomas' answer. 担斯礼说，首先我必须纠正啦，他在9点45分抵达的时候，大概已经有500到700名律师，所以是不正确的哈。报章说只有300到500名，然后其实有多过警方的人数在那边。而真正让担斯礼让 Mr. Thomas 感到惊讶的是，警方竟然滥权，不让律师游行，只是1公里的距离，不让律师们游行去呈交这个备忘录，所以这个是妥妥的滥权行为，也可以展示警方是有多么的不合理在使用他们的权利。But Thomas, is it really true that our judiciary is facing a very serious threat? Because I think under current CJ, Yang Ahmad Arif Tengku Maimun, our judiciary is strongest ever after 1988 judicial crisis. So what's your views about this?
Well, I think that there are similarities to previous occasions. So, for example, the greatest threat to the independence of our judiciary was in 1988 when we had the judicial crisis, which resulted in 6 of our senior judges being suspended, and 3 of them were removed, including Tun Saleh Abbas, the Lord President. And if the question is asked, why did that occur? It was because the executive branch perceived that the judges were too independent. So it was the independence of the bench that was perceived as being a threat to the executive branch. So if we draw those parallels, I think that today's situation is perhaps not so much as a threat from the executive or legislative branches, the other 2 branches of government, but certainly the concentrated attack on the trial judge in the SRC case, which was why we wanted to march last Friday, is very, very deliberate and orchestrated. And it's the function of the bar to protect the judges when these things happen. And that was what the lawyers were trying to do. We were trying to defend the independence of the judiciary as a collective unit, and certainly this judge as an individual judge.
Yeah, thank you, Tan Sri. Mr. Thomas， 丹斯礼 Thomas 的回答是，他觉得这个情况跟之前的司法危机是有一点相似的哈。当然，最严重的是1988年的司法危机 （Judicial Crisis），不是现在，但情况跟之前有一点相似。他认为现在最大的问题是司法独立竟然被视为对行政、对政府是一种威胁。他觉得这种看法是不对的哦，而且对 SRC 的法官 Nazlan 的攻击是非常明显和不应该的所以律师必须站出来保护法官，因为律师 bar and bench 律师跟法官是一个整体所以这个是丹斯礼 Thomas 的回答。 Thank you for your insight on this. If I may, we shall move to the first chapter of our today's show, which is the controversies and events followed by the publication of this book. So my first question is, I know the reason you write the book is to set the record straight, but following the publication of this book, many reports has been made against you. Some of them said you violated Official Secrets Act. Some of them said you defend them. Some of them said you make up the content and it's not a fact. And government has even formed a special task force to investigate you and your book. As such, can you briefly tell us what is the status of all this malicious action made against you, particularly the civil lawsuits filed? We all know ex-PM Datuk Seri Najib Razak has filed a defamation suit against you. Was there anybody else? And how about the criminal investigation, including the investigation of the special task force formed last year? Is there any charge pressed against you, Tan Sri?
Well, starting off with the police reports, I think there were more than 200 police reports lodged probably the first 1 month after the English original version was published. And as a result, I was called to the police and they were very professional. They asked me a series of questions. I was accompanied by criminal lawyers, and so were a lot of other people who were involved in the production of the book. So that part of the investigations are known to me. Insofar as the civil suit is concerned, you are right. The former Prime Minister Najib Razak sued me for defamation, and that suit is pending in the courts. There will be a trial, and that relates to the Altan Tuya murder, which I allude to in the book. And finally, insofar as the special task force is concerned, as you know, that was set up a few months ago, but I took the position that task force has no legal basis. Whereas if you look at the police, when the police questioned me, they had the legal right under the law to question people in the course of investigating the occurrence of a crime or the non-occurrence. They have to investigate, but they have legal powers. And I was happy to cooperate with them. But the special task force, in my opinion, does not have any legal powers, and I therefore decided not to participate or cooperate with them in any way. And we have to wait and see what their report would indicate.
And
also, of course, whether their report will be, and also whether their report will be made public.
Yeah. So there's no charge pressed against you at this moment, and only one suit fought by the SPM, Dato' Sri Najib. Only one person.
Arising from the book.
Yeah. 丹斯利回答说，他记得当时有超过200个报案书在书出版的1个月内报警，针对他书里的内容。然后他很专业的去录了口供，警方也很专业，他跟他的 criminal lawyers 就是刑事律师一起去录了口供，然后过后没有什么事情发生他一直都有配合警方的调查。而告他的人告他诽谤，根据这本书，因为这本书来告他诽谤的人只有纳吉前首相纳吉一位然后这个 case 现在正在跑着啦然后关于特工队就是 government 的 special task force 丹斯利说因为他们没有法律地位所以他没有配合他们的调查，因为他没有权利来调查他，而他们的报告会不会公开现在也是不知道的事情。不过刚才我有特别询问啦，到底有没有被提告但是 Thomas 说没有到现在他没有被提告过，也只有前首相一人是控告他诽谤的，因为这本书My second question, Thomas, I'm sure many of your precious times has been wasted due to all these malicious actions, especially time is the most essential things for a successful and prominent barrister like you. You have spent plenty of your time not only for writing this book, but also for the investigation and lawsuits came along following the publication of this book. Did you ever regret for publishing the book? And if the answer is no, why? What is your purpose, Mr. Thomas?
I certainly have no regrets publishing the book. What I expected some reaction, but to be honest, I'm surprised at the venom of some of the criticism, particularly those early police reports where it was very clear that those who lodged the police reports did not have a chance to buy the book or to read the book because it was coming out so quickly after the publication. I have no regrets, and what I can't understand is why are people in Malaysia not exercising their right not to buy the book and not to read the book. It's not mandatory or compulsory to read the book or to buy the book. So it is just another publication that can just be avoided and disregarded. There was really no reason for that kind of criticism and condemnation publicly.
Yes, thank you. 但是你的回答是我当然没有后悔啦出版这本书，但是让他感到惊讶的是他出书之后反应竟然是那么大的而且他发现很多人是没有读过他的书就去 make a police report 去报警没有读过书的根本都不知道它里面的内容就跟风去报警所以他有一点感到失望啦为什么马来西亚人连基本的了解都不愿意去买这本书，不愿意去阅读，然后就随便的做出无理没有根据的攻击So my last question for this chapter, after this we will go into a more controversial chapter for tonight's show. So my last question about the book, why you decided to publish a Chinese version for this book, not Bahasa, not Tamil? I am sure it was not an easy job at all to translate your book to any language, including Chinese, because your book cuts across law, politics, history, and even religion. The first 3 or 4 chapters is about religion. I still remember. So was there any specific reason for this Chinese version?
No. I always was hoping that the 3 other languages, that's apart from English, the original was in English, but the 3 other languages that are used in Malaysia, that's Malay, Chinese, and Tamil, would be good markets for my books to be published. And in fact, initially there were interests expressed by both the Malay and Chinese and Tamil scholars, but very quickly they did not pursue it partly for the reason that you mentioned, that they said that it will just take a long time. There's just too much skill and experience required to translate. And anyway, they were not sure whether at the end of the day there would be a market. So in that sense, I'm really delighted that the Chinese scholars continued with pushing for the project. And they were pretty determined and single-minded and pursued the project and managed to get all the scholars to do the translation and the proofreading and whatever. So I'm really delighted that it's published in the Chinese language. And as I said in the forward to the Chinese version, particularly when the Chinese is one of the greatest and oldest languages in the world. So to be recognized by by the Chinese language is to me an honor, and I'm very grateful. And I only wish that it could also happen in Tamil and Malay down the road.
Yeah. Thomas 的回答是他当然希望这本书有更多的翻译，更多人看，越多人看是越好的。而且确实一开始是很多人对翻译这本书到Bahasa到 Tamil 是有兴趣的，但是当他们在了解了这本书之后就没有进展了。部分据Thomas 丹斯礼Thomas 所说的部分原因是刚才我所说的，因为这本书非常难翻译，它横跨了法律、政治、历史和宗教，而只有中文学者他们坚持下来继续翻译下去，所以才有这本书出来。所以他希望在未来会有其他的语文出现，所以他也特别强调中文是一个很优美的语言，是所以他也很开心他的书可以翻译成中文。所以在这里也希望大家多多支持啦，这本书在 online 平台全部都可以买到，各大书局也已经有了，所以可以支持一下。已经出炉了，在6月3号的时候正式出版。So now, Mr. Thomas, with your permission, now we shall move to the second chapter of tonight's interview, which is the appointment and resignation of the AG post and your relationship with Tun Dr. Mahathir. This is much more controversial. So my first question is, you were one of the strongest critics of Tun Dr. Mahathir during his first tenure as Prime Minister, we all know. And you have stated in your book that an AG-PM relationship is nothing much different with a solicitor-client relationship, where mutual trust is almost important. With this, you have actually fiercely criticized Tun Dr. Mahathir previously. Was that mutual trust even existed between both of you? If not, why you accepted the appointment in the first place, Mr. Thomas?
No, but that's absolutely correct. I mean, the mutual trust and confidence developed from about 2015 when I, along with a few other lawyers, like-minded lawyers, visited the former Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir, particularly on the 1MDB issues and Tun Mahathir's interest in 1MDB. And in the course of the 3 years, roughly 3 years, 2015 to 2018, I would have met Tun, maybe, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 times and exchanged ideas on 1MDB and then later law reform. So that would be pre-appointment. And then I was appointed. Then, of course, in the course of the 2021 months, I would see him once in 10 days or once a week, or as the case may be. And again, there was no problem. Our working relationship was fine. He never interfered in the operational legal matters, and I was left alone. So yeah, from my perspective, I certainly thought there was trust and confidence between both of us. You will have to ask Tun whether he felt the same in the 20 months.
Yes, that's the next question I want to ask, but I translate your answer first. 但是他说，洪律师你说的对，其实我们双方从我的角度来看，我们双方是有信任的基础的，而这个信任的基础是开始在2015及2016年开始萌芽，因为当时丹斯礼Thomas跟几位同样看法的律师，他们都有去见马哈迪，在这本书里面是有讲到这个故事的去见马哈迪，然后谈论 1MDB 的事件，因为 1MDB 当时大爆发嘛，而这个交情，这个信任度慢慢的萌芽啦，在2年后，当 1MDB 越来越受到注目，越来越多丑闻出来，关系也越来越强。所以他会被委任，其实可以说是一个 pre-appointment， 就是在那之前其实就已经认定是他了。所以这是 Tommy Thomas 的回答。 So exactly same question goes to Tun Dr. Mahathir, but he's not with us tonight. So I have to ask you, in your opinion, why don't pick you? You were his strong critics. And we all know at that time, former judge and prominent barrister Sri Ram and Tun's longtime personal solicitor Hanif were also eyeing for the post. I think both of them were closer to Tun than you, and they have their own strengths and advantages as well. So again, why you, Mr. Thomas? What is your what makes you the edge of the land, unprecedented in history?
Well, I think you will have to ask Tun that question really, because he is the person who appointed me. But I would just say that I think when we started visiting him in 2015, 2016, 2017, up to the time of GE14, we had formed, that is a group of lawyers, not just me, we had formed some kind of relationship with Dr. Mahathir. And certainly, even from the first meeting, we did not harp back to the old days when he was Prime Minister and we were critical of him in many areas, particularly the judicial crisis and whatever. I think we moved on. We are meeting in 2015, which would have been over 20 years after the judicial crisis and so many other scandals. So in a sense, I think everybody moved on. We did not dwell in the past. We were working in the present and then hopefully in the future. That was certainly from my perspective.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thomas. 所以他的回答是这个问题其实必须由敦马来回答，然后最好由我去问敦Dr. Mahathir。但是他觉得我们在2015年见面，直到第14届大选就是2018年2018，他们已经建立了强力的关系，强力和有信任的关系，而这个关系并不会因为之前20年前所发生的 judicial crisis，丹斯里强力抨击敦马的行为而受到影响，因为大家都是成熟的，政治成熟，思想成熟，大家向前看 ，move on 所以不会给过往的事情给拘绊，所以这个是他的看法。当然，这是从他的角度啦，他认为的，并不是敦马的看法，所以可能这个问题我们要问敦马比较好。So next question, Tan Sri, many people thought that you were strongly criticized and undermined Dr. Mahathir in your book. Many people thought that. Many people told me you criticized Tun in this book. But in fact, in my opinion, I don't know whether Mr. Thomas agrees with me or not. It is completely the other way around. We all thought Tun is a dictator. He's the only one to give order and everybody shall follow. But in your book, you actually thank him for not micromanaging at page 372. I still remember, I mark it at page 372. And he give you a completely free hand. You mention it at page 234 and 240. And not only that, you also mention when some minister, such as finance minister and home minister, make a complaint against you directly to the prime minister, Tun had backed up you. He was at your back. So all this painted a different face of Tun. Why he has such a trust on you? I think you answered that. Was it because the mutual trust or because he was too old to micromanage? It's not like his first tenure. So why is it? Why he give you such a free hand? It doesn't seem like the first tenure, what he did. We all know what he did for so long. So, Mr. Thomas.
Well, I think our relationship post-appointment was to some extent dependent on our relationship prior to the appointment. As I said, the 3 or 4 years when we worked together. And I think what brought us together were common issues. And the classic common issue was 1MDB. And later on, Tun agreed, listening to us, that the administration of law required reform. And there were a lot of old laws that have to be repealed. So those were the common areas. And then when I took office, after he appointed me, he realized that those were going to be our priority areas. And so he, in a sense, left it to me because he knew that those were also in areas that interested him, 1MDB. He was interested. He knew a lot about 1MDB. He understood the big picture. And for somebody who was very anti-lawyers and the rule of law, you would see that in his speeches in 2018, 2019, Tun Dr. Mahathir was forever talking about the rule of law and promoting the rule of law. So I would say that because we had shared 3 or 4 common areas of interest, the relationship worked. And I guess he let me go about doing those work. That he did not micromanage. That may be one explanation. He was content to let me do it.
Yeah. 但是里 Thomas 的回答是，他说我们在一起的时候，其实有很多 common 的事情就是我们有共同的想法、共同利益，或者是共同关系、看法一致的事情，比如 1MDB， 比如一些的老旧法律必须修改，比如 rule of law， 比如推崇法治、推荐法治。Thomas 有提到，尤其在2018、2019年，如果你有听敦马的言论，他一直都在强调 rule of law 就是法治而非人治，我们必须用法来治理国家，用制度来治理国家，所以这个是可以让他们共同合作的基础，也是敦马让Thomas 可以独立，然后没有去干预他。So my next question, Mr. Thomas.
Can I just add something? I just realized there's one other common area, which was the lopsided contracts that the government had been saddled with. So the foreign contracts with China, ER, and a lot of domestic contracts. So that was one area, because of my corporate commercial background, that we talked about it, and we said we must review those lopsided contracts. And that occupied a lot of my time, and the Prime Minister let me do that.
Yes. Mr. Thomas 说，其实还有一个 common area 就是双方共同都觉得要解决的问题，就是很多国际跟国内马来西亚政府所签署的合同是吃亏的，大吃亏的。而 Mr. Thomas 他是一个很著名的商业律师合同律师这方面的专家专长，所以这也是为什么敦马会放权让他去这样子做的原因，而且他大部分的时间都在 review， 都在解决这些很 one-sided 的 contract， 马来西亚是吃亏的。So as I mentioned just now, Mr. Dansri, many people thought that you were strongly criticized Tun in your books, and I checked the news and I found that Tun did actually reply to the media reports which highlighted your criticism against him, and Tun was very fed out, was definitely disappointed. I quote a news report from Astro Awani dated 5th February 2021. I quote, former Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad has expressed regret over appointing Tan Sri Tommy Thomas as AG, an individual who has criticized him in his memo. But as I mentioned previously, you actually did not say many bad things about him in your book. And in fact, you are praising him. The only thing which largely highlighted as criticized by media was that you felt his resignation decision is bizarre. That's the only thing I think you criticize about him. But for me, the reason Tun resigned is similar to Mr. Thomas. Your reason when resigning from the AG post, your reason were Tun is the person who appointed you. So when he's no longer in power, then you should resign and vacate the seat for the new PM. Besides that, you also stated that you cannot work with the new government. And Tun's reason was because I lost the number. Pakatan Harapan, Tun command the number. He was no longer command the majority. So he must step down with dignity. This is the only way out for him. And he did not wish to work with the traitors. So with respect, actually it's the same reason for you and for Tun. Then why you think Tun's reason is bizarre, Mr. Thomas?
Well, You are right in the sense that insofar as how I treated Tun Dr. Mahathir, and in fact, it's only towards the end of the book when I was discussing the fall of PH, and I did preface that by saying it was quite painful for me to criticize Dr. M in those decisions to resign and to have the entire cabinet resign, because it could have been just a personal resignation, rather than the entire government falling. I mean, till today, 2 years later, I really cannot understand why Tun Dr. Mahathir had to resign on the 24th of February, Monday, the 24th of February, 2020. Because in my view, even if he thought that he did not have enough numbers of MPs supporting him to cross the 112 threshold, he could have still stayed in power and, as Prime Minister, as the incumbent, made sure that there are enough support for him. Bear in mind that the two Prime Ministers who followed him in the last 3 years, none of them have tested their popularity in the Dewan Raya. We still haven't had a motion of confidence for 3 years. So why could not Dr. M have continued being Prime Minister without having it tested? The government is stable. There was no need. So I still, therefore, hold the view that there was no reason to resign, and I've not been given any proper explanation as to why he resigned.
Okay, so Tansri's answer, no, I translate to Chinese. I forgot it. 所以Tansri 的回答是，他到现在都还不明白为什么敦马他要辞职哦。他说，就算他认为他没有 numbers， 他没有人数，他没有 command majority， 就是没有大多数人支持他，不能 cross 112 112人支持他，那他还是可以继续掌权哦，而且他辞职是他一个人的辞职，不应该是整个西蒙政府的辞职。而且我们看接下来有2位首相，他们不够人数，他们还是可以继续用权力去拉拢人来支持他。所以，但是认为敦马也应该这样子做，去继续掌握权力，然后去拉拢然后维持自己的权力，维持自己的政权。他说他到现在还是不明白。敦马辞职的原因，而且敦马也没有告诉他原因。好 ，so well, Mr. Thomas, you have your reason to resign. This I have mentioned just now, but I personally think that you should hold this post as long as possible, even though Tun has already resigned, and you resign 4 days after Tun resigned. Because if you hold this post as long as possible, you can resist the comeback of old-style AG, the AG who will follow every order of the PM. And I don't think it will be an easy task for Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, the new PM, to sack a strongman like you who hold the post as AG, the most powerful man in Malaysia, what you said in 1983. So why you resign? Why you don't want to sit on the position and do something for the nation? And the nation is in chaos at that time. Tan Sri.
Well, I mean, you've already alluded to it. I mean, I had to work, the AG had to work with the Prime Minister of the day, and there was little confidence in that I shared that I could have the same kind of relationship with the incoming Prime Minister, who happened to be then Prime Minister Muhyiddin. And we had differences actually just close to the time of the change of government, relating to the LTT case, where he was the Home Minister and I was the AG. So I wasn't very confident that we would have a good relationship. But also, more importantly, I was very much in support of the reforming agenda of the PH government. It mustn't be forgotten that the PH government was elected after GE14 on a reforming ticket, and the manifesto had a lot of reforms in mind. And I was quite happy to be part of that reforming administration, doing a small bit there to try and help reform. But there was no assurance that the next government was going to be reform-minded. And as it's turned out, they were not. And the two governments that have followed are not reform-minded. And nobody would associate the two governments with reform. So as a matter of ideology, I would not have been able to work with the new government.
Yeah.
So I really had to go. It's a question of whether you go in the first day, first week, or first 1 month. But it is foreseeable that the chemistry is not there.
Mr. Thomas 的回答是，他说，首先作为 AG， 像我刚才有提到的就是作为总检察长，他跟首相必须有相互信任的关系，而他跟慕尤丁是完全没有这个关系的他们有分歧，就是在 LTTE 淡米尔之虎事件，当时有几位议员、几位人士被逮捕，然后丹斯利跟慕尤丁新首相的看法是不同的，所以他完全无法在他之下工作，这是肯定的。然后更重要的一点是Pakatan Harapan 是 reforming government， 丹斯利Tommy Thomas 是 reforming attorney general， 就是改革派政府的改革派总检察长，而他很高兴可以担任这一个职位来进行改革。但是接下来的政府就是丹斯利慕尤丁亚辛的政府，他会不会继续改革根本不知道，而且从现在来看他们根本没有改革的意愿，所以因为这个理念因为这个 ideology， 所以他必须辞职，可能时间拉长一点，1个月到3个月，最终他还是必须辞职所以这个是他要说的。Mr. Thomas, do you have anything want to add? If no, I will go to next question. Let me see whether I have put up the translation. So this is the next question. Before that, did you, as I said, Tun En was very disappointed with the media reports. I don't think he read your books, because if he read your books, he will know you actually praising him and not criticize him. And so the question is whether did you contact him or you call him to explain to set the record straight, Mr. Thomas?
Well, I went to see Dr. Mahathir after the book had come out, and I went to present him with a copy. But it was clear to me, which would have been about 3-4 days after it had been published and it become available in the market. And there was no doubt in my discussion with Tun on that occasion that he had not read the book. I don't know whether 1 year later he has read the book. I don't know, and I've not met Tun since that meeting.
Mr. Thomas 的回答是，他说他在3-4天之后是有去见敦马跟他解释的，但是从那次见面，他很明显的知道，很明显的看出敦马是没有读那本书的所以他跟他解释也没有用的意思啦。但是现在已经1年后了，敦马有没有读他就不清楚了不过当时他是完全没有读的So my next question, this is the last question for this chapter, and then we will have a short break. This question is about Dr. Mahathir as well. In page 490 of your book, English version, you stated Tun did not assert his leadership in both the cabinet and Pakatan coalition. You also said Tun never showed the leadership that he was respected during his previous tenure. With this, are you trying to say Tun was a lame duck and powerless prime minister and was not as powerful as his first tenure? I'm not sure whether this is a compliment or disparage, because during his first tenure, Tun was so powerful and always be regarded as a dictator. But now you said he was too soft, cannot control his purse, cannot control his delegates. So, Mr. Tan Sri, can you explain this? Is this a good thing or bad things?
Well, if I remember, that would have been in the context. Everything is in the context. You mentioned the page, and of course, I can't remember so specifically. You got the advantage. You read it recently. I have not. But it would have been in the context, and the context was this: after Tun resigned, he was quoted in the papers as saying that the PH leaders, and of course, I don't know. I don't sit in the cabinet. I'm just quoting from what is the public domain, which is that the Prime Minister or former Prime Minister was quoted as saying that he had difficulty, the coalition parties were much stronger, they were exerting themselves, and he did not control the cabinet as well. So these were his words, and it will be in the public domain. If that is so, that's the context. And my answer then is, you do not have to resign because of that. If that is the problem that the Prime Minister was facing, the solution was not to resign. The solution was, well, there are many. You are the Prime Minister. You are the incumbent. The Prime Minister is so very powerful in Malaysia. And he held that position for 22 years. He knows how powerful you can do changing the portfolios. You can drop ministers from the cabinet. You can bring new ministers in. And you can lay law. And there are so many ways of doing things. The Prime Minister of the day is not powerless. And resigning was not the correct solution. That was the context.
Yeah. 但是 Thomas 的回答是这句话就是我刚才说老马敦马他说他没有权利，他控制不了内阁。其实他说这个是要看当下的语境的，而那个 context 那个语境是当敦辞职之后，他自己有被提到说他有问题，在这样子的联盟没有一个强势主导，不是像之前的 UMNO 是强势主导 Barisan 的嘛，这个 Pakatan Harapan 没有一个强势的政党来主导，所以他没有能力去控制这样子的联盟，内阁他也控制不了所以这个是他自己也这样子认为的但是 Tommy Thomas 认为就算是真的敦马面对这样子的问题，他也不需要去辞职了，因为你是 Prime Minister of the day， 就是你是现在的首相，代表着你有绝对的权利。在马来西亚，首相是有非常巨大的权利的，你可以进行内阁改组，所以可以撤换部长，可以派上自己的人选所以绝对不应该出现你辞职的情况了这个是丹斯礼Tommy Thomas 的答案所以So we take a break for 1 minute, Mr. Thomas, so we can have a short break. Then our audience is now stands at 2,700 people. So don't leave. After 1 minute, we will come back. Please click like, share, and subscribe. So we'll come back in after 1 minute. 1 minute. Thank you.
Yes,
let me. I before that, today the show was sponsored by Jintel, so we will watch a video from Jintel about their new massage sofa.
This is stuff.
Hi, Jintel.
I am here.
Jintel.
So, welcome back to the show. The sponsor for tonight, Jintel, are currently offering a buy one free one promotion, plus an extra free gift and free transportation to all our viewers in conjunction with the Parents' Day celebration. The promotion shall end soon. We all know Father's Day was last week, so I think this promotion will be ended within this week. So anyone who interested on this promotion, please contact or WhatsApp 012-580-5205. So now I invite back Mr. Thomas and担斯禮Tommy Thomas, and we shall move into chapter 3. The failure. Before that, I need to click first. Yes. Welcome back, Mr.担斯禮Thomas.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may, now we shall move to the third chapter of tonight's show, which is the failure of Pakatan administration and your views about other politicians in PH administration. We start with a more general question first. No doubt there are many weaknesses and mistakes made by the PH during these 22 months. Nonetheless, if compared with the current government or the government led by Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, I would say Pakatan Harapan's government is still far more better than their counterparts. What makes people angry against Pakatan was that many reforming agenda, as mentioned by Tan Sri just now, were abandoned when they were in power. What is your views about this? Do you think Pakatan government is a complete failure? And on the other hand, there are some merits. Is there any merits in the current government led by Dato Sri Ismail Sabri or previous Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin? Let's go with a big picture first. Compare the current government with the PH administration. Mr. Thomas.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought this up because I discussed this in the book, which is I say that the 22 months that the Pakatan government, Pakatan administration governed the country, there were a lot of improvements. So, for example, just let's take the GST that was abolished. The lot of the lopsided contracts were renegotiated. And then, of course, we prosecuted a lot of wrongdoers from 1MDB. So there were, and then we started fairer contracts with China and other countries, and we were wanting to get into the HSR deal with Singapore, but we needed a bit more time. So I would say that we did a lot of good things, and then we appointed Chief Justice Richard Malanjum, and then later on we appointed Chief Justice Tunku Maimun. And so the PH government did a lot of good things. I think where they seem to have failed was a perception that which took effect very, very quickly after they went into power and remained with them, was that they were not fulfilling their manifesto promises. And I think when they started disregarding their manifesto and saying we never expected to win and therefore we don't expect anybody to take it seriously, there were those kinds of statements, and that became a millstone around their neck. But I would still say that they did quite a lot of stuff, and we also had good law reforms. We had the under 18 voting and compulsory registration. So there were law reforms, not enough, but at least a start was made. And again, it's all relative. So if you compare to the government before them, which was Najib's government, which won MDB, which was defeated in the election, and the two governments thereafter, I still say that the PH government did a much better job. And then likewise, when it comes to COVID, I would say that both Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir was a doctor, and the Minister of Health for PH, Zulkifli, they were doing a grand job in COVID. When COVID first made its appearance in Malaysia, which was towards the end of PH's rule. So I would say history would be quite kind to the PH government, particularly relative to other governments.
Yes. 丹斯利的答案是其实他说他在这个问题，他在他的书中也有说到，22个月的西蒙政权其实有很多进步，大家没有看到。比如他举例 GST 被废除，很多不合理的合同被修改，然后西蒙提告了很多 1MDB 做错事的人，然后也跟中国重新谈判。所以他说西蒙做了很多好事，而且他们委任了Chief Justice 第一位东马的大法官 Richard Melajan， 还有改革派的大法官现在还在位的登古麦mun Yang Ahmad Arif 登古麦mun。所以他认为其实让人民生气的并不是他们抛弃，因为我问的是抛弃嘛，抛弃了这些改革议程，让人民生气的是他们没有重视他们的 manifesto， 他们的竞选宣言。有人说宣言不重要，有人说没有想到自己会赢，所以宣言乱定，宣言定根本是没有想到要去执行的。对丹斯里而言，这些都是自杀性的言论是自杀性的言论。而且丹斯里也有提到，其实西蒙有很多法律改革他都做出了很多改革，而且如果你要比较一个政府的好坏是比较性的，你拿西蒙的22 months 22个月跟 Najib 时代跟 Muhyiddin 跟 Ismail Sabri 时代来比，他还是远远好过他们的。所以他说现在你可能发现不到，但是拉长时间来看，用历史的角度来看，他相信在未来大家会明白西蒙是更好的政府。好 So my next question, Thomas, many people think that Pakatan forgot about their reforming agenda when power was in their hand. As mentioned by you, they said we never expect we will win, so the manifesto we will just write anything we could. One good example, I give you a good example which is related to you. That is the power of AG. Tansri, as I mentioned at the beginning of this program, you have written an article in year 1983, exactly 3 years before I was even born. The title of the article was AG is the most powerful person in Malaysia. And I quote from the said article, last paragraph, the powers of the Attorney General make nonsense the doctrine of separation of power. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The power of the Attorney General has increased since Merdeka, is increasing and ought to be diminished. Immediate steps ought to be taken by the relevant authorities to reduce his power so that the doctrine of separation of power is restored to its proper place in the Constitution. This is one of your main concerns when you accepted the appointment as AG of Malaysia. I still remember, Tan Sri Thomas, you said to the public that the separation of power between the Attorney General Office and the Public Prosecutor Office is in your top list. But obviously, it had not been done until you resign from the post. So why it cannot be done during the 22nd month periods? I don't think UMNO or PAS, they will object to this reformation because at that time, they were also so scared of you. You are the most powerful man in Malaysia, as stated in your articles. So why this reformation cannot be done within the 22 months period?
Well, I think there's a simple answer to that. It required a constitutional amendment to separate the office of the public prosecutor and the Attorney General. And Tun Mahathir wasn't very confident that he would get the 2/3 majority. Now, of course, I know the Minister Syed Saddiq managed to get not only 2/3 majority, he got unanimous support for the under 18 under 18 vote and the compulsory registration. So I think probably if they had tried, if the PH government had tried to separate the office, they may have got the 2/3. But it's a political will decision. I supported it. I've always held the view that office must be split. I continue to hold that view, and I certainly wasn't an obstacle to that reform.
Yes.
Can I also say that the Attorney General's chambers, they themselves decided to have some kind of a referendum among their officers while I was there, and I think initially they were against it, but if I'm not mistaken, I think the majority who took part in that survey supported the splitting of the office. So I think there is so much more consensus over 30-40 years of separation. So I think it is just a question of time before that happens. And it's a disappointment did not happen during our time.
Yes. 关于这个问题丹斯利的回答是很简单，因为需要修宪，而当时的首相是没有信心这个修宪案能够通过的。当然他也提到后来undi edin 就是18岁投票也是要修宪嘛，得到朝野一致的通过。所以当时如果他认为我们尝试一下去修宪来分开总检察署的提控跟法律顾问这2个巨大的权力给它分开来，那有可能是获得通过的但是强调它不是这个分割总检察署权力的 obstacle 就是障碍他是支持的，而且他还记得当时在总检察署内部有公投 referendum 就是公投内部有公投，大家其实大多数人都支持分开的，所以其实有很多支持的力量，但是最终还是回到政治意愿啦，因为怕修宪不过关，可能政府就要倒台，所以他们没有意愿去做这样子的事情。So my next question, similarly, reforming agenda, others reforming agenda, such as to completely take out the Prime Minister role in Judicial Appointment Commission and relocate such role and responsibility to the CJ or ex-CJ because check and balance. We don't want the CJ has absolute power in his hand. This definitely will ensure the independence of the judiciary and also the equal and fair allocation for all members of parliament. Now, PH is begging for the ruling government for allocation, for equal allocation. But when they were in power, they didn't amend the law to ensure that equal allocation given to all members of parliament. And of course, the revival of Parliament Services Act to ensure the independence of the parliament. All this has not been done or achieved by the Pakatan government. And I think this is the fundamental reforming agenda, which must be achieved by Pakatan during their tenure. 22 months, 5 years, they must do it. So what is the reason again? Was it because of Tun? Because after the government fall, PH has criticized Tun and said Tun is the obstacle. Tun have no willing to all this reforming agenda. He was not our side. He was the UMNO man. So what is the real reason behind this one? I think Mr. Thomas can give us a clear picture.
Well, unfortunately, I really cannot, because these are matters for the cabinet, and presenting a bill, deciding what laws to be presented to the parliament, what laws to be enacted. Those are all matters for the ministers to take, and they take that in the cabinet. And after they make a decision, they just instruct the AG or the parliamentary draftsman or others to start preparing those new laws. So as to the politics of the cabinet, as to who support law reform, I cannot answer that.
Yes.
But can I also, in addition to the laws that you mentioned, I accept everything that you say. We also had sort of turn around on things like the death penalty, the Sedition Act, the MCMC. So there were quite a few of the laws that we wanted to repeal or totally abolish, even SOSMA, but we just couldn't get it through for various reasons. So yes, I mean that is a sad commentary. But as against that, can I just say, in their defense, that everybody expected the PH government to be at least a one-term 5-year government, and if they had governed properly, hopefully a 2-term 10-year government. So I think there was some calculation among the politicians that they had between 5 to 10 years for law reform, and they did not have to rush to do everything in 22 months. As I said, nobody expected the government to fall. And I think that was one of those problems too, which is often forgotten.
Yeah, thank you. 但是你的回答是这个他说其实他无法回答啦，为什么这些法案没有被修改，没有被改革，因为他没有在内阁里面他无法出席内阁会议，这个是部长跟内阁所做的权利所以他不能回答到底是谁是阻碍，是谁不想要这些事情来做到必须内阁做出决定了，他作为 AG 才能去 根据他们的指示来进行他的职责，来进行改革。不过他强调有很多法律他是要废除的，他也提议废除，比如 SOSMA 但最后不能成功，里面有很多原因，这个等一下我会问到了。然后最后他也想说，其实这些政治人物他们都认为至少有5年或10年2个任期他们可以执政，所以他们会算计几时才是真正的改革时机，他们没有想到这么快就会丢失政权，所以这也可能是为什么这些改革 agenda 没有改革议程没有被执行的原因。Dansi Thomas, my next question. Some minister mentioned about deep state. Civil servants were reluctant to work with the Pakatan government and try to sabotage the administration. You have also mentioned in your book at page 236, I did a lot of homework, that as a newcomer to AG chambers, you realized that the public sector lawyers had a public service attitude and there was no incentive to distinguish themselves. And there were also rumors that you have been sabotaged by AG chambers staff because you were an outsider. You were not from the AGs. You were not there before, and like helicopter, you just landed there out of nowhere. And you're not even a criminal lawyer. So the staff in AG chambers that sabotage you. So are these true? Did you face the deep state and sabotage issue when you host a post as AG?
Well, I would like to clarify. I cannot remember using the word them sabotaging anything that I wanted to do. That's a bit different from them receiving an outsider. That I think I said. But insofar as your general point about the deep state, and I've been saying this a few times, I think the expression the deep state has been overused in the last 10-15 years, not just in Malaysia, all over the world. And I wonder whether the overuse of it has made it, in a sense, meaningless. Is it an excuse for a weak minister who has no idea of his own or who did not perform well, as an excuse says, I wanted to do, but I was stopped by the deep state. I personally think that the influence of the deep state is exaggerated. I think if you were a strong minister, you will get your way and you will say, look, I want this policy done, or I want to take this decision. And if you stand in the way, I will transfer you out, the civil servant that is. So I personally think it is exaggerated, the effect, the influence of the deep state in Malaysia. But of course, we also know that there are other areas where they operate in military and police and whatever, that maybe their influence may be there. But in specific answer to your question, can't the ministers get their decisions done because civil servants are obstructing? I would say only up to a point. The minister can finally get his way.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. 他的答案是他不认为他有被背歌了，他也没有说过他被背歌哈。我刚才是说是谣言了哈，所以他没有说过他被背歌。但是 AG 的人 ，AG Chambers 的人把他当外人，这个是另外一回事。但他觉得这个不是什么大事，因为他确实是外人嘛。至于深层政府，也就是 Deep State 这个词，他说这10几年来已经完全被滥用。他并不认为深层政府不管在国内外有那么大的权力，有那么大的影响力，而他现在只是变成一个借口。这些没有能力、没有执行力、很弱的部长、很弱的政府会找借口推卸责任给这些深层政府，所以他认为深层政府的影响力在马来西亚已经是被夸张化了，是不正确的。So my next question, Thomas, one of the issue of your appointment was that you were the lawyer appealing for YB Lim Guan Ying, Secretary General of DAP at that time. I personally don't think this is a big issue, as you were also counsel for past in oil royalty case. So both sides you have represented them. What I want to ask is your relationship with DAP was, I think was better than others party. Before your appointment as AG, you have represent Lim Guan Ying, and you mentioned you are good friends with Lim Kit Siang for over 40 years. So, but in this book at page 366, YB Lim Guan Yin, as finance minister, has made a complaint against you to Prime Minister, and he was not satisfied with you. And also, your good relationship with YB Teresa Kok also became sour due to the EU palm oil restriction issue. This is at page 371. So my question is, how is your relationship with them and ODAP now? Are you still in good talking term with them? With Teresa Kok, with Lim Guan Yin, are still in good talking term?
Well, actually, I can't remember the differences I had with Minister Lim Guan Yin. I thought everything went well. I can't even remember any incident.
It's about the Petronas issue. I think the oil royalty 20%, Petronas go and seek assistance from Lim Guan Yin, and then Lim Guan Yin give you instruction. Yeah,
it is a minor matter. Yeah, but on the EU palm oil, yes, there were much more differences, because that was all about how does Malaysia present its case once the cabinet decided that they would challenge the EU law, EU directive, which discriminated Malaysian oil palm. And the cabinet decided that we would challenge this in the WTO. And because this is a legal matter, obviously it comes within the purview of the Attorney General as the chief legal advisor of the government. And having a lot of trial experience, I wanted to run the case the way I saw it. So that is where there were differences with the minister and the civil servants on the EU. Insofar as post, the thing is, because I've never been a member of a political party, I see these politicians at social functions. I've not met Teresa Kok since the election. I've met Lim Guan Yin a few times. Everything is fine, and I wish him the best. So there is no problem meeting them socially. I'm quite happy to meet them.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Thomas 的答案是他说他跟林冠英的分歧，他一开始不记得跟林冠英的分歧是什么，然后我也提醒是关于 Petronas 那个的28%石油税的 Petronas 不满意。Mr. Thomas 他是同意要给28%的，所以他们去找林冠英投诉，然后林冠英就去找敦马投诉。他说这个只是很小的分歧，后来也解决了。而跟郭树庆关于欧盟限制中油的分歧就不一样，因为当时是整个部门他们要求的打官司的 strategy、打官司的团队、打官司的方法跟AG Chambers 跟担斯礼汤米汤姆斯是完全不一样的，而且担斯礼汤米汤姆斯他是律师啊，他有非常多的经验去打这样子的官司，所以他认为应该由他来决定哈。但是郭树庆一直要插手，这些在书里面都有提到哈，大家可以去看一下。然后最后担斯礼也有提到其实他都有见到林冠英，然后当然他们的关系还是不错的啦哈，没有变质还是怎么样。好 ，So Mr. Thomas, this is the last question for this part, this chapter. I have read your books for 4 times. 2 times for English version, another 2 times for Chinese version because the proofreading thingy. That's why I have a chance to check through all your comments in the books in regards to the leaders of Pakatan Harapan. Surprisingly, I found that you only praise 3 persons. One is Tun Dr. Mahathir, one is YB Sai Saddiq, and one is YB Liu Wei Kiong. I don't know whether you still remember. I have jotted down everything. You compliment 3 persons only. Others you mentioned like YB Lim Guan Yin, YB Teresa Kok, YB Saifuddin Abdullah, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, Zuraida Kamaluddin, all of them, which is something bad about them lah, because they ignore your advice, they don't want to work with you, or they have different views with you, and they don't want to concur, and they make a complaint to Prime Minister. And besides that, many others leaders has been omitted in the book, such as Mat Sabu, Anthony Locke, and Azmin Ali. Their names almost omitted and not mentioned in your book. You did not comment about them at all. So my question is, how were their performance? Can you give the audience a brief overall picture of all these leaders and their performance in Pakatan administration?
Well, I think the reason I did not mention them in the book was that I think my dealings with some of them would have been very minimal. Although my dealings with with Minister Anthony Loke for Transport. I remember dealing with him on the MH crash matters. And then with Azmin Ali, I think probably on Petronas. But they were such short experiences, it did not warrant a description in the book, because at the end of the day, I was trying to write on some episodes. It wasn't a daily diary. So it's really not a commentary on anything. It doesn't mean that I support them, or I like them, or I dislike them. What I would say as a general statement was that all the cabinet members were very, very friendly. They were very happy to receive my legal advice, whether they accepted it or something else. And I was very happy to give them advice. And often I would go to the ministries and meet the ministers over lunch or coffee and have a chat. So I would like to think that I had a good relationship with most of them, in the sense that I was trying to help them on legal problems. If they had a legal problem, I tried to help them. And likewise, the senior civil servants in most of these ministries, if they had a legal problem, I was happy to try and solve it. Because I spent my career as a barrister who by definition, tries to solve problems.
Yeah. 但是你的回答是他们有提到他们是因为接触很少，跟陆兆福有一点点接触，是因为 MH370，跟阿兹敏是因为 Petronas， 但是没有提到他们因为接触实在是太少了。他写书不是一个日记不是记录所有的事情，他只能根据章节、根据 chapter 来写，然后把重要的事情记录里面。所以他强调他写进去的都是根据事实所发生，他认为重要的需要记录下来的，而不是因为他讨厌或喜欢他们在他看来，他跟每一个部长的关系其实都很好，因为他的责任 as Attorney General, as a barrister, barrister 就是上庭律师啦，还有作为总检察长是帮他们解决问题，尤其是法律问题，还有Senior Civil Servant 就是高级公务员，有法律问题，面对什么问题都会来寻求他的帮忙，寻求他的意见，所以他其实跟每一位部长的关系都很好，这个是丹斯利所想要回答的。So thank you, 丹斯利 we take a short break again, then we will come back around in 1 minute time. So everybody, now we have 2,800 person with us. Please like and share. Then let me take down the title first so we can witness another video which is about Diva. Just now is Divano X and now is G5, the super massage chair. Now Jintel has a buy one free one promotion. So let's see. Welcome back to the show. Let me first put up the title of the sponsors of the show, which is Jintel. The video you witnessed just now is the new super massage chair from Jintel named S5. Now they are offering a buy one free one promotion plus an extra gift and free transportation charges to all of our viewers in conjunction with the Parents' Day. So the promotion shall end any time now because the Parents' Day is already passed last week. So anyone who interested on this promotion, please contact or WhatsApp 012-580-5025. Thank you. So we bring back our guest of honor, Mr. Tommy Thomas. Welcome back, Mr. Thomas. Wait. I need to take down the title first. Because I'm multitasking, so you see there are two computers in front of me.
You've done brilliantly.
Yeah.
Most impressed.
So now, yes, we are going to chapter 4, which is the comments on the current issue and politics issue. So my first question about Najib. I think many people said Najib is your nemesis because you convicted him, you charge him and make him a convict person. Najib is now making an application to nullify conviction of his conviction in SRC international case because he alleged that the trial judge Nazlan was having conflict of interest. Do you think this application has any merits in it? Previous law minister and prominent lawyer Zaid Ibrahim has urged the federal court to seriously look into this issue. So what is your opinion on this, Mr. Thomas? I think this is your background, this is your area. So what's your view on this? Is Zaid Ibrahim correct?
Well, I mean, I've seen the court papers and I disagree. I think this application is without any merit. But since it's pending before the federal court, let the federal court make the decision after hearing submissions from both sides in the usual way. But if you ask me for my opinion is very simple. I think it's an application without any merit.
丹斯里说他看过这个申请文件他自己个人认为这个申请是完全没有任何理据的没有 merits 就是没有理据但是这个法庭这个申请已经交给 Federal Court 就是我们的联邦法院来做出审理，所以他不能更深入的评论了，就看双方律师怎样去做 submission 就是陈词，向法庭陈词，然后法庭自然会做出一个正确的判决。但是如果你问他个人意见这个是他个人意见，他认为这个申请是没有 merits 的，就是他要取消掉 SRC 的案件，因为南斯兰有利益冲突，这点是不成立的这个是丹斯里的决定丹斯里的看法了So my next question, I take down the question first. Mr. Thomas, after your interview with China Press last week, you have said that Anwar Ibrahim, the PKR president, should look into the mirror and ask himself why he has yet to become prime minister. And this has definitely triggered Anwar, as he almost immediately replied and requested you to look into the mirror as well. Immediately he replied. This is actually not the first time, Mr. Thomas, you expressing such a views. In your book, page 496, again, I'm very specific, page 496, the very last paragraph of the page, I quote, you have wrote, Anwar, for his part, used his proceeds to publicly humiliate Tun. Errors showed by Anwar's supporter contain more lethal poison than those showed by external adversaries. Infighting again every so often, so carrion call would be heard from Anwar diehard, demanding that Tun to step down. Who needed enemies when friends of ilk were commonplace? Sadly, Anwar seems like never learned from all these lessons he has gone through since 1998. Mr. Thomas, do you have any further advice for Anwar Ibrahim, including his allies, such as DAP, whom I think they have a stronger ties with you? You have more than 40 years of friendship with Lim Kip Siang, so I think they are more willing to listen to hear your words. So what is your advice to Anwar, to PH? How can they turn over the downturn of PH at this time?
No, I'm not in the political arena, so I really cannot give any advice. But can I just give you the background of that remark last week? And the context was, I think the question was, why has Anwar not become prime minister? That means after Tun Mahathir, we had two prime ministers. And that was a question. And my answer really was that I don't know the answer, but there is some self-examination required. I wasn't trying to answer the question. I really don't know the answer. But insofar as self-examination is concerned, I'm quite happy to do it myself. And I think all of us should reflect on oneself, on what one did, right or wrong.
Yes.
It never injures anybody to have self-reflection and looking in the mirror. So I intended that to apply to myself. But it wasn't meant to be a great critic of Anwar. It is just that to answer the question, why are you not a prime minister 25 years later? Don't forget, between 93 and 97, he was our deputy prime minister, and touted to be the next prime minister after Dr. Mahathir. And we've had so many prime ministers since. So that is something that one has to look at. I don't know the answer. I'm asking the question.
Yes. Mr. Thomas 的答案是他在政治里关于这个问题大家可以看到我有翻译，我有打在荧幕之上他说他不在政治里，所以他很难给他们意见，他们是政治人物，但他觉得他要说一说为什么他当时会叫安华去看一下镜子，去了解一下自己为什么不能当首相，而敦马可以做了2次首相，安华却一直都不能。丹斯里说他其实不知道答案，为什么安华不能他不知道，但是他希望安华能自省看镜子就是 self reflection， 就是自省，自己反省自己的错误所以他说他对于安华的反应，安华批评他，叫他看回自己也去看回镜子，他说他没有问题，他认为每个人都要了解自己，要明白自己的长短处，要去自省，所以他没有问题。从镜子里，安华说我也要从镜子里了解自己的错误，他没有问题他觉得安华应该想一想啦，为什么25年之后已经25年的时间了，他还不是首相从1997、1998年他就做副首相，甚至做代首相到现在所以这是丹斯里的答案Thomas, my next question. Frankly speaking, I think it is very clear that the current government is not functioning well, as you have mentioned just now. Rakyat people has already labelled the government as kerajaan gagal. But on the other hand, the opposition is also shrinking and still dreaming to work with Bersatu, to work with Muhyiddin Yassin. And it is so clear that they are so fear about the election and would like to avoid it and make it latest possible by signing an MOU with the ruling government. Do you think this is a wise move for Pakatan Harapan? And we as Rakyat, do we have another choice besides of Pakatan Harapan for the unfinished and yet to be completed reforming agenda? Who can we rely on if you want a reforming agenda now? Tan Sri.
Well, I think I would start by saying that every step must be taken to avoid a general election before the completion of the 5-year term. Typically, if you look back at our history, most parliaments have lasted the 5 years, and it would mean constitutionally that you only need to have the elections, I think, in August or September of 2023. Certainly 1 year to go. So I would say that it is in the public and national interest for the election to be held as late as possible. Why do I say that? Because the people of Malaysia are really going through a very difficult period. And let's take with incomes first, and salaries and wages. Millions of Malaysians are on fixed wages. They have the salaries have not gone up, their wages have not gone up. During the COVID period, if you were in the private sector, you had no safety net, your businesses were stopped, small businesses were affected. So people are slowly recovering with the opening up of business. Their savings have been depleted. Even the EPF payment savings, which were for retirement, was allowed to be taken out for consumption. So the people of Malaysia are struggling. And therefore, the last thing they want is a general election. And as I said, the government is stable enough in the sense that there is no motion of confidence being put into the Dewan Rakyat. The speaker just won't allow that. And so the government is stable, the government is safe. So there is no need to have a general election. So that would be my primary argument, that everybody should say, let's focus on trying to help the government take the right policies.
Yeah. 但是你的答案是他觉得应该让5年的任期完成啦，在5年的任期完成前，所有人都应该尽量避免选举。我们的政府还有1年的任期，他认为 这是国家跟人民的利益来推迟大选因为我们的人民真的没有面对很大的问题尤其是薪水和生活的问题，薪水没有上升，尤其是 COVID 时期在私人界完全没有保护网，而且现在是慢慢复苏的情况，大家都很辛苦，连 EPF 都要拿出来用，所以人民最不需要的就是大选所以这个是丹斯的看法。 So Mr. Thomas, you are agreed with you are agreed with the Pakatan Harapan to sign MOU with the current ruling government, which is a backdoor government, which has no basis, no mandate at all, and you don't think it's a time for election? And
well, they're two separate matters. I belong to that school which says we shouldn't have elections. Now, whether there should be an MOU is a separate matter, which is really very much a political decision. And the political parties which either support it or are opposed to it have their own political reasons for it. And I'm really not qualified to comment on it, whether you have the MOU or not. I think let's take one law that really has to be put into place as quickly as possible. That is the anti-hopping law, the defection laws. Yeah. So surely it is in everybody's interest, and we must get unanimous support because this is another 2/3 majority law. We should get 100% support, like Undi 18, for the anti-hopping law to come into place. And if the politicians say that in order to get the anti-hopping law passed through Parliament, you need an MOU, then so be it. Those are matters for the politicians to sort out.
So, Mr. Thomas, can you hear me?
We seem to have lost you.
Wait a moment, because another laptop was out of power. That's why just now I'm fixing it. But I can hear you. Can you hear me now, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you too.
Yeah, thank you. So I translate your question first, your answer first. 刚刚不好意思大家，我的另一台电脑没有电了，因为我用我太太的电脑所以刚才有一点卡兰卡布一下。丹斯利的答案是他认为大选应该推迟，但是对于政府应不应该去签署这个 MOU， 他的看法是不一样的而且他也保持这样子的看法因为那这是完全另一回事啦你要去跟政府合作，然后让政府继续来让这个后门政府来继续执政，然后去支持他们，是完全不一样的事情这个基本上就是他的回答So the next question is sorry, Mr. Thomas, is a bit of chaos because of the out of battery issue. So my next question, besides Pakatan Harapan and of course UMNO and Bersatu are never a choice for any person with a reforming mind. Do you think previous CM of Sabah, Chief Minister of Sabah, Dato Sri Shafie Apdal is a good candidate? In your book, you barely mention his name or his achievement and only describe him as a skilled politician at page 497. His party is ambitious. He had already crossed the South China Sea and expanded their wings at Peninsula. So do you think Warisan is a way out for the fed up supporters of Pakatan? Is Warisan a good choice?
Well, I think the problem with Warisan and Shafie Apdal is that, first of all, unfortunately, they lost in the Sabah elections 1 or 2 years ago after the PH government had fallen. So I know there's a lot of money politics in Sabah and vote rigging and vote buying. That's been endemic since they joined us. But given that as a reality, Warisan still was disappointing in failing to. They were the incumbents. They were defeated. So that's the first thing. And then when they fielded candidates, I think in Malacca and in Johor, again, they did not fare well. It could be that there is a West Malaysian Peninsula bias. The typical voter in West Malaysia may not be mature enough or advanced in thinking to say it's time to give East Malaysian leader some place in national politics. So I would say that realistically, he has a lot of hurdles to overcome, regardless of how impressive a candidate he may be or what policies he has. I think he's got to convince the typical West Malaysian voter to vote for him.
丹斯里的答案是关于瓦利山跟沙菲阿卜达，他说很不幸的，非常不幸的一点他确实用了不幸这个字，是他们输了沙巴大选，虽然他们是 incumbent， 他们是执政党但是还是输了，这是第一点所以他们没有一个基地，他们没有一个可以向外说服的论点然后第二点，他们在马六甲跟柔佛，其实是柔佛啦，马六甲他们有参与他们在柔佛他们输了但是也认为这可能是因为西马情谊节的关系，不是因为他们不好，或者是他们不能被接受，而是西马人有一个情谊节，他们不能接受东马领袖来到中央来当全国性的领袖，中央领袖必须是来自西马的所以丹斯里说从现实来讲，他认为瓦利山现在还有很多障碍需要克服，他先必须说服这些典型 typical 典型的西马情谊节的选民来支持他们，所以他还有很长远的路要走了这个就是丹斯利所要说的。好so did I take out the translation? This is the translation for last question I asked because now I only have one computer, so a bit karang-kabut. So this is the question I asked just now for people who not so fluent in English. So I have prepared a translation for you. So next question. Wait, I pick out the question first because now I only have one computer. So my next question is about the anti-hopping law, which you have mentioned just now. Anti-hopping law, which has been seen as one of the most important KPI for the MOU, entered upon between the opposition and the government. And the tabling date of the law has been postponed several times. Do you think that the anti-hopping law is necessary? Definitely yes, you have answered that just now. Further, latest news from Bersatu suggesting that being sacked from a party does not fall within the definition of hopping. So with this definition, Azmin Ari, Juraida Kamaluddin and their allies will be excluded as hopping because they were sacked by the party on the subsequent day after the Sheraton move. So Tan Sri, you as the SAG of the land, and one of the AG's role is to draft bill for the House, for the cabinet. So do you think this definition is a good one? And will you include it if you are the person in charge in drafting the law?
Well, I think the way to deal with anti-hopping is to ask the question during a general election, and we've had 14, 15 general elections, typically, does a voter vote for the individual candidate or the party/coalition? And if that question is put in the forefront, the answer would be very clear. 95% of voters, both in Malaysia and in most Westminster-style parliamentary democracies, vote for the party or the coalition. So, so the voters have voted for Party A candidate, and it doesn't matter why Party A candidate, after getting elected, decides to go to Party B. It doesn't matter whether he's sacked, he jumps, he resigns, whatever. That is my thinking. Because the voters voted him on the Party A ticket. When he leaves the Party A, for whatever reason, there should be a by-election. And then then both sides would realize, both the party sacking him or he himself wanting to resign will realize the consequence is an immediate vacating of the seat and the calling of elections within 30 days or whatever. And of course, you can have a saving grace, which is that in the last year of Parliament, in maybe the 5th year of a 5-year Parliament, you don't need to have a by-election. But the first 4 years, it's an automatic by-election, regardless of why you left the party. And the theory is that the voter voted for the party, not the individual candidate. And that voter has been let down. He must be told again, what do you think again? That is my thinking of party hopping law.
So if the anti-hopping law, which the government said it will be tabled on this coming July 18, they will table the anti-hopping law. And if the law includes this definition, is still a good law or is meaningless? Because if you want to make yourself being sacked from the party, it's very easy. Just like Azmin, just like Julaida, you just openly support the your opponent, then you will be sacked from the party. So if the law passed, it's meaningless for me. So what's your view, Mr. Thomas?
Well, I agree. Exactly. You can present a fait accompli, forcing them to sack you, or a constructive sacking. So you can arrange your affairs doing that. I agree with you. But can I just say that I would like to defer my comments on the bill until I've seen the bill. Let us see. Let us wait for the bill. When the bill is presented in July or August or whenever it is in the public domain, then I will comment on the bill. I don't want to say anything earlier and to criticize until I've seen the bill. But you asked me what my own personal preference is. I've already told you. I would like a by-election in the first 4 years, regardless of the reason why the candidate left.
I translate first. Mr. Thomas 的答案是他觉得如果你要谈跳槽，要问的一个最简单的问题就是选民投的是人选还是政党还是联盟他说这个问题的答案很明显，99% 的马来西亚人在马来西亚西敏寺议会制度，英国的西敏寺 Westminster 议会制度下，他们投选的是政党或联盟。所以只要你换政党，不管是任何情况，不管是什么方式，只要你离开政党，被开除也好，跳槽也好，自己退党也好，那都必须有补选，这是反跳槽法的基础。因为人民的选择，人民投你的理由已经被背叛了然后我有继续追问啦，就是如果7月18号政府提成的草案是把开除不包括在内，那是不是这个草案就是没有意义的？你同意这一点吗？丹斯利的说法是他同意如果开除不当作跳槽，那是没有任何的意义的，因为你要给党开除是很容易的事情，就像我刚才所说的。不过他强调了，现在大家都还没有看到这个 anti-hopping law， 就是反跳槽法的草案，所以要更好的评论这个草案，要等到这个草案在 public domain， 就是给我们公众可以去下载，可以去看，那他才能更好的评论。但是如果我们现在问他的看法，反跳槽法应该是怎样？他说，那他的看法是头4年，可能第5年不需要，但头4年如果你换政党，你一定要悬空这个席位，然后一定要有补选。第5年可能不需要，但是前4年一定要。这个是丹斯利Tommy Thomas 的看法。So we continue. This is my last question for tonight. We already go live for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Thanks for your precious time, Tansri. So my last question for tonight is about the Sam Curtin case. Her case, which the public extremely concerned. You were being blamed by politicians for filing an appeal against the first acquittal at the magistrate courts. So many politicians, they said it's your fault because you filed an appeal. An innocent young lady has been deprived by your decision. So is it true that you were the one who made the appeal decision? Because in your book at page 408, you stated clearly that it was humanly impossible for any person to have knowledge, however scanty, of every criminal case handled by the prosecution arm of the AGC. So you were telling the world in your book that you cannot, as a person, as a man, you cannot know every prosecution case handled by AGC. So my question is, was this Sam Curtin's case was in your knowledge at that time and you make the decision because somebody blamed you, said you make the decision? And what's your views on the 2 times acquittal and 1 time conviction upon appeal in this case,担斯礼?
Well, the original decision to charge the lady was made by the resident DPP in JB. I didn't know about it. And that's how the decentralized system works.
Yeah.
And then the magistrate did not call the defense and acquitted her. And that hit the media. And when it became a media news, and then the DPP concerned came to see me in Kuala Lumpur, in Putrajaya, and recommended an appeal, and I took the decision to appeal against the not calling of the defense, and the High Court agreed with us, and the High Court remitted it back to the magistrate court. I don't know whether it's the same magistrate, and then the magistrate's court again acquitted the accused, and I think it was my successor's office. I had left by then. They appealed again, and the High Court again found in favor of the prosecution, and now, of course, it's before the Court of Appeal. So it is one of those things where you can see the way the court is going. They've had different decisions. That's how the legal system works. We have to wait and see what the Court of Appeal does. Now, insofar as the criticism of that people make, that is part of the job. There is no problem about a public prosecutor or DPPs being criticized for any decision we take or the decision we don't take. That is part of the turf. But can I say this, that it would be a very brave prosecutor anywhere in the world who refuses or fails to prosecute a person, a car driver, who had collided into 8 cyclists who were killed. So 8 lives were lost. And a prosecutor who does not prosecute would really be very brave, because the more sensible thing would be to say, look, especially if the IP says there's a prima facie case for prosecution, let the court decide whether the accused has a defense. I stand by my decision, and I think it was right to prosecute and to appeal. And if we have a bad case, then the court will acquit. And if we have a good case, the court will convict, because finally it's the function of the court to decide whether we have a good case or not. And she has lawyers, and she has a day in court. But to say that she should be immune from prosecution is unacceptable.
Yeah. 关于这个沈可婷的案件相信大家都很关注。丹斯礼的回答是，他说一开始提告的是州级总检察署，然后这个案件在推事庭被宣判无罪，连 defense 就是抗辩也没有 call， 也没有叫抗辩，因为连表面罪都不成立。所以州级的总检察署有针对这个案件来咨询他决定丹斯礼说是他决定要进行上诉的，因为不可能就连抗辩连 defense 都没有就判输，没有 prima facie case， 这是不对的。他说大家要明白，你不应该随便去批评总检察署的任何决定，因为这是他们的工作。而且丹斯礼有提到这个世界上真的没有一个检察官检控官会选择不提告一个车祸的驾驶者涉及撞死8个脚车骑士，如果有的话，也是极端勇敢的 prosecutor， 极端勇敢的主控官才会做出这个决定。而且他提到一个重点这是之前新闻所没有的，就是 IP investigation paper， 警方的调查报告已经清楚说明这是一个 prima facie case， 就是证据很明显的案件所以跟大家的想法可能不一样所以这是从丹斯礼Tommy Thomas 所给出的答案。好，那我们今天直播就到这里，在那之前我们还会有时间给丹斯礼Tommy Thomas来做一个小结。So we take a break now, Mr. Thomas, because I have asked all my questions. Do you still have time for Q&A session, 1 or 2?
Yeah, sure.
Do you mind? Yeah, so we take a 1 minute break, then we come back for maybe 2 questions. Then we will go for the conclusion, the closing speech by you. So we rest for a while.
I don't have a closing speech. I'm happy to give that to the question.
I am here.
Chintel.
Yeah, so now we go to Q&A questions. First question from Kerry Sim. He said, "Hi, Dansri, what is your opinion on the recent Sabah Pakatan readers who has filed a suit against the federal government for 40% tax revenue? They said 40% tax revenue collected from the Sabah should be returned to Sabah. What is your views on this case?" We all know, as stated in your books, you were supporting the idea that 20% of the oil royalty shall be paid to the state government. So how about this 40% tax issue? Do you have any idea about it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know enough of the specific case and the 40%, where they got the figure and the basis for that. I don't know enough of it. But what I would say is, as a general observation, that from the time Sabah and Sarawak entered Malaysia and the federation was formed in 1963, it's going to be nearly 60 years of the federation. There is no doubt that a strong case can be made on their behalf that they have been shortchanged, that they got the poor side of the bargain, and therefore it's time to redress that bargain and give them back what they lost out over the decades. I belong to that school, and I always tell my friends in Sabah and Sarawak that the reason why that was achieved was because all the leaders of Sabah and Sarawak willingly gave up their rights. It wasn't as if Kuala Lumpur put pressure on them. They always had willing cronies or proxies of allies who agreed in giving up the rights of Sabah and Sarawak to the center. And if you want to reorder them, it's a good time to have some kind of reordering of all of the entire relationship, which would of course include financial benefits to be enhanced, as a general observation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Thomas. So the second question is, where the coup? He said, "Tan Sri, Mr. Thomas, can you comment the performance of AG before and after your term? Are they performing on par or below expectation? You have set a high record, high standard over the world, I think. I have this one, I have to do some advertising for Mr. Thomas' book. I write a forwards for the books, and I stated, and I quote, let me quote in Mandarin. Actually, I wrote 2 versions, one in Mandarin, one in English, but only the Mandarin version were published. And I quote, 汤姆斯先生在他任期内展现的睿智及高智慧标准，环顾全世界其他区域或国家的总检察长同行相比起来也毫不逊色。他的傲然不群、不与俗流，甚至大有凌驾之上的态势，这点绝对是所有国人的骄傲哦。So this question asks on whether you are on par or below, whether the AG before and after you on par or below you. I think this is a question is very obvious, but we need you to answer, Ms. Tansi Thomas. What is your opinion? What is your opinion with Appendi, Idris Harun? How is their performance?
No, I think it'll be invidious for me to comment on my predecessors and my successor. That would be totally unacceptable. Just as it would be unacceptable for any government officer, whether you're a finance minister or a director general of health, to comment on your successors and predecessors. That's really not fair. And I think it's for members of the public to make their own judgment. So everybody is free to make their own judgment. But I think people like us who held those office should not be publicly commenting on it. That would be invidious.
Yep. So two more questions. This one I think is quite important. From Yap, he said, Dansley, people are asking, was there a selective prosecution during PH time, since those politicians mentioned in the UKSP ledger were not charged in the court together with Shahid? May we have your comment, please? I think Hishamuddin, I think Shafi Abdal, their name was mentioned, and Muhyiddin Yassin. Not only name mentioned, but also amount received by him. So what's your reply, Mr. Thomas?
Well, I think this tells you why trials are so wonderful. Whether it's a criminal trial or a civil trial, they always produce surprising evidence. Which is why nobody can fully prepare for a trial. So in this case, obviously there is a witness, and I think it's somebody called Mr. Tan, I think. He could be a banker or a company officer who has got wonderful accounts and ledgers where he very carefully minuted all this kind of information, probably contemporaneously. Now, there is no way that when the IP was being prepared and when the recommendation would have been to charge the accused here, and I think the accused here is the former Deputy Prime Minister Zahid and current UMNO President. I think he was the accused in this particular case. There is no way that we would have got that kind of micro information, which will only turn up at the trial years later. So I would answer, that's how trials are. The amount of evidence, the volume of evidence, and the intensity of the case becomes clearer at trial, not at the stage where you file a statement of claim in a civil case or where you prosecute. So that's a general observation, and I think you as a lawyer would understand that straight away. So speaking for myself personally, I did not know of all these things when I took the decision to charge the particular accused. The IP would have been much less detailed, just saying a prima facie recommendation to prosecute. And then I would have studied those macro documents and made the decision. We would not have gone into such micro detail. And for all you know, this could have been the 30th or 40th witness on day 46th of the trial. And this tells you how wonderful trials are.
Yes. 但是你的回答其实就是这个就是审讯的好处哦，这些证据是我们不知道的，它是 out of sudden 突然就这样子跳出来的，而且这个证人是很后面的证人，他才突然提出这个证据，这个证据之前他是不知道的哦，他也没有看到在调查报告，警方的调查报告就是 IP， 刚才我也讲到的嘛 ，investigation paper 里面是没有的哦，所以大家必须明白。希望有回答到你的问题。So this is our last question for tonight. From Chong, Mr. Thomas, did you enjoy working for Tun and PH during their 22-month rules? This is a good question. So I use this question to end the tonight's session before I pass the mic to you, Mr. Thomas.
Are you happy?
Are you happy?
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed working. I was blessed. They gave me an opportunity. I think those who know me would know that I love making decisions. I mean, not all lawyers like making decisions, but I was one of those lawyers who loved making decisions. And so the job gave me the opportunity of making decisions, both on corporate, commercial, constitutional, many areas of the law and public. So I'm eternally grateful for being given that opportunity to make decisions. And of course, those were my decisions. I always say there would have been any number of wrong decisions for which I accept responsibility, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. And it's a great blessing. I'm eternally grateful.
So 他很开心他有这个机会，他是少数，很多律师不喜欢做决定，决定都是交给客户做的嘛。他说他是少数喜欢做决定的律师，所以他是很 enjoy 的，很开心的哈。所以也回答到冲的问题。So Q&A session closed. Now we move to the last part, the crossing part. I will before that. Dancy Thomas, I have time for you to make a conclusion or 1 or 2 words you want to say to the audience now. I think just now we reached 3,000 persons online concurrently for this show. So anything you want to tell the audience online, so you can tell them. But before that, I would like to remind 3 things. First, of course, please like, share, and subscribe this program so that it can reach more viewers. More person can join in and more person can view. Tomorrow they can view the replay. So please like and share. Secondly, the Chinese version of Mr. Thomas' book, Justice in the Wilderness.
I got it too. Yes.
Yeah, it's on sale now. You can buy it at any major bookstore in Malaysia or through online bookstores such as mybuku.com or other online merchants such as, for example, Shopee and Lazada. You can buy it online as well. And thirdly, and the most important one, Mr. Thomas and I has a physical launching event for this newly published Chinese version of Justice in the Wilderness at the Kuala Lumpur and Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall on Sunday, 3rd of July, 4 p.m. Those who haven't buy the book can buy it at the event and you will get the chance to have the book autographed by Mr. Thomas. So please attend. Don't remember, I myself will be attending. So, and I will have another dialogue session with Mr. Thomas. So see you all there. Mark your diary. Sunday, 3rd of June and 3rd of July, 4 p.m. at KL and Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall. Now I pass the mic to Dancy Thomas. The time is yours.
Well, I think, Mr. Kenneth, thank you very much for hosting this and being such a skillful man Friday, doing all kinds of tasks. I've spoken enough on it. I see we've crossed 2 hours. There's nothing really I need to add. And I thank all your viewers for standing by. I think crossed 11 p.m. and they asked questions. So I really have got nothing more to add. And I also would like to invite them or as many of them who are in KL to come and join us on 3rd of July. And then I wish you good night and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Dancy Thomas. Good night. So I shall see you soon. And I definitely shall visit you before the 3rd of July. Thank you for joining us, your precious time. Thank you very much. The words cannot describe how thankful am I. So thank you, Mr. Thomas. So
thank you. Good night.
Good night and goodbye.
Bye.
That's all for tonight. I'm sorry, just now there's a little bit problem. One of the computer run out of battery. Luckily, I have 2 computers today. So I won't left Dancy Thomas alone in the picture. So that's all for tonight. And I switch back to Mandarin. 刚才我们2个小时真的很谢谢我的师父Dancy Thomas。其实我刚才已经下载了图片就是我们7月3号星期天在龙雪华堂会有一场 physical 的 launching event， 就是这本书会正式的推荐给大家然后主持人是前主播前 NTV7 的主播 Jasmine Oy 黄冲涵小姐，她会做主持人，然后当天也会有一个我跟 Dancy Tommy Thomas 的对话， 所以希望大家可以出席，呼朋唤友，而且可以拿到丹斯礼的签名是非常非常不容易的哈，所以大家可以看到哈，有签名的哈是非常非常不容易的，所以 3rd of July 我们那里见哦。那今晚的直播就到这里，然后有什么做的不好的地方，我的英文发音不标准还是什么，我英文不标准，马来文也不标准，中文也不标准哦，有一个口音，不好意思，而且英文是我的third language， 我一直都说我最好的是中文，第二是马来文，第三是英文。希望没有让大家失望了，也希望带给大家一场精彩的直播。也谢谢我们的丹斯礼汤米汤姆斯，我们马来西亚的传奇我们的前总检察长，谢谢接近3000位在线的读友。离开之前记得点赞、分享、转发。那今天的直播就到这里大家晚安，再见。最后就用 Intel 的广告来结束今天的直播。Intel 现在还有买1送1优惠应该剩下最后几天了，所以还没有买的读友赶快联系012-580-5025来购买这一个优惠。所以我们今天的直播就到这里，大家晚安。那最后就用 Intel 的广告来结束今天的直播，大家再见。
Thank you.